Thank you, Ann. I just want to say it's a blessing. It's good for us to be here. St. Paul said, when you're not welcomed in one place, kick the dust off of your shoes and go to another. And I want to thank in a special way, of course, our Lutheran sisters and brothers for their warm hospitality this evening, where we can come together and talk about peace and justice, which really I've come to the conclusion, as many of us have, it's at the very core of our faith. It took me quite some time to get on that road to peace and justice. When I grew up in this small town in Louisiana, when we gathered into our little church there, we didn't really critique U.S. foreign policy. We didn't question our leaders. We didn't talk about peace and justice. We did not mention that sin of racism and sexism that was so alive in our community and our church. I went to the State University. I got a degree in geology and worked hard at that degree. When I left college, it was during the days of Vietnam. It was very easy for me to join the military. I was taught to be patriotic. I spent the next 4 years in the military. In a way, it was my ticket out of Louisiana. 2 years aboard ship as a young naval officer, went to a NATO station in Europe. And then when our leaders were saying we had to go off to Vietnam, I bought into that, as many of us did. They said we were going to be the liberators. Our cause was noble. The same language that they used to justify the war in Iraq. Isaiah, the prophet of the Hebrew Scriptures, said it so well. He said, they will take evil and call it good. They will take the lie and give it to you as truth. And this is what they did in Vietnam. And this is what our leaders did about Iraq. And we bought into that evil and those lies. But fortunately today, we can see the lie about what's going on in Iraq. We know it was a terrible mistake. And so many died for that mistake. It was in Vietnam that became a turning point in my life. The violence, the suffering there, losing friends, wounded there. I don't know what else to say other than I was forced into the arms of God. Death was close. I've come to the conclusion, not overnight, but through that experience in Vietnam that has just simply grown over the years, that we are not made for war. Read about the tens of thousands struggling with PTSD, the suicides. We are not made for war. Our God, a loving God, a creator, who has given us life that's sacred and precious, did not make us for war. And I and many have come to the conclusion in our journey of faith, something very important and very clear. God does not bless war. God does not bless killing. God does not bless violence. God does not bless discrimination in its many forms. It saddens me to see the silence of our spiritual leaders, our church leaders. As a Catholic priest in my travels throughout the country, I'm often asked, why are our church leaders, our spiritual leaders, so silent on this war in Iraq? I do believe that many of our church leaders have become corporate executives. Our shepherds have become government sheep. And I have no doubt at all, if we had in the Catholic Church women priests and women bishops, that silence would be broken. I know that. But we have learned something very important. Peace will not come from the top down. No. It will come from the bottom up. We will be the peacemakers. Not the corporate executives, not the politicians, not the spiritual leaders who have grown silent. No. It is our responsibility. If there will be peace in our world, in our country, it must come from us. I came back from Vietnam, my year was up, and I must say I was so grateful to be alive. Back in Louisiana with my family, close-knit family, my siblings, my friends. And I came back different from that person I was when I went there. It was in Vietnam that I lost my hope. This joy that was so much a part of my life just fell apart. And that's what war does. It kills hope, destroys joy. And I wanted to try to rediscover that. I was led to the Marino community by a chaplain in Vietnam when I realized that peace was the only way that I'm going to recapture my hope. And he recommended the Marino community, working in 25 countries around the world, serving the poor. He said they were healers. They were peacemakers. And I entered the community, and I must say it began for me a whole new world. 6 years in the seminary, a lot of reflection, a lot of studies. And then I was ordained a Catholic priest and now assigned to our work in Bolivia. Bolivia is very much in the news today. It's a very poor country. Most of the people of Bolivia throughout the developing world live on the edge. They struggle for survival. They're in the shacks without running water, without electricity. Most do not have schools for their children. When their children are sick, there's not a clinic to go to get those needed medicines. After struggling through language school in Cochabamba, Bolivia, and I have to confess, I think I was the worst student to ever go to that school. When I spoke Spanish, they thought I was speaking this indigenous language, Aymara. But I went into La Paz, a slum there, and I began to live with the people, the poor. And they became my teachers. And that's the way it works. If we will only dare to put our feet with them, the poor, the oppressed of our world, the victims of violence, they will teach us so much. Bolivia was living under a brutal dictator, General Banzer, who came into power through a violent coup. And it angered me to see my country there, the United States, giving guns and training to the men with the guns, the bullies, the thugs. They ran the country. And the large corporations back then and today, they're coming into those countries like Bolivia, where there are huge profits to be made from the cheap labor and those vast natural resources.